Hi, I'm Dr. Sharon, Saline, trying again. I'm new at this, as you can probably tell, so there are some tough technical difficulties I'm trying to overcome. I have a little anxiety about it, actually. That's what we're going to talk about today, anxiety, which has been my companion, these many years, and also how anxiety particularly affects people with ADHD. Now, when worries interfere with daily living and cause distress, they become anxiety. Anxiety is a full body experience. You feel it, with racing heart rates, with rapid breathing. We feel it in our brains with sort of distorted thoughts, and we feel it emotionally with a lot of fear and helplessness. Thinking is worrying is actually much more related to your thinking. So oftentimes anxiety and worry get confused. But anxiety is that full body physiological response, and worry are the distorted thoughts that go along with it. So when we think about anxiety, we often think of it in a way that just how unpleasant it is and annoying it is, but really actually anxiety is very adaptive. It helps our bodies prepare for fight or flight. You know, when we were living many, many years ago in the jungle, anxiety helped us. We would hear, creaking leaves, and we might walk out and, oh my God, there's a tiger. And we would have to decide, are we going to fight or flight? How would we respond? Now, that necessarily isn't an anxious response, but the next time that you're walking around in the jungle and you hear crinkling leaves and you worry that it could be a tiger, you have that same physiological response, but instead it's a squirrel. That's anxiety. It's a natural emotion that you feel at an inappropriate time and to an excessive degree. Now, why are people with ADHD primed for anxiety? In my opinion, it's because they spend years hearing about what's wrong with them and what they're doing that's not appropriate. And so they develop a certain hypersensitivity or hypervigilance to signals and words that people are giving them about what they're doing wrong. They become anxious about when they're going to mess up next. Now, this may not be the prominent thing that goes on for you, but in my work with people with ADHD, it's always there. And that makes me sad. So how do you help people manage anxiety? This is a short question with a very long answer, which I'll talk about a little today and probably follow up another time in one of these Tuesday tips at 2. So the first thing that you need to do with anxiety is to calm down the body. And frequently people say, I do that breathing, it doesn't work. Well, you can't really do breathing when you're very anxious. So, because doesn't work. What you have to do is breathing with an action. So with kids, sometimes they like to smell the flower and blow out the candle. Smell the flower and blow out the candle. With adults and with some kids as well, I recommend yoga breathing. You take your 2 fingers, you put one finger here, and you breathe in with the other nostril. And then you breathe out. You breathe in, and then you breathe out. This keeps your body and your mind both working to calm everything down. Another thing that you can do is really try to talk about what's happening. Not about the thing that you're afraid of, but really what you can do in that moment. And so in that moment, just talking about what you're most concerned of, what your concerns are right now, how you're feeling right now, because language helps calm the feeling part of the brain. Language comes from the thinking part of the brain, and it's that feeling part of the brain that's taken over when people are afraid. We call that the amygdala hijack. Now, another way that you can kind of deal with your anxiety is to identify what the cycle of anxiety is. What are the triggers? What are the worries? When does it go into panic? And then you can try to intervene right in between when you identify the trigger and when the worries start to take over. I call that changing your relationship to the work, to the trigger. That's all we can really control. And believe me, I've tried to get rid of my anxiety for many years. It still rears its ugly head sometimes. The difference is how I respond to it. And that's what I'd like to try to encourage you to do. And the way I respond differently to it is I do two things. The first thing is I think about a time when I was in a similar situation and how I responded successfully. Because I can take that success and apply it to the current situation. Maybe I'm afraid to speak at work. I have a presentation that I need to give and I'm nervous about it because it's 1,000 people. Well, it's normal to have a little nervousness about it, but not to the point where maybe I'm sweating or I don't want to do it. Instead, what I have to do is think about, okay, when have I given a presentation before? How did I do that? What made it successful? And then I apply that to the current situation. We'll talk some more about anxiety in the future, but for right now, I want you to try to use those breathing techniques and interrupt the cycle of anxiety by identifying the trigger and thinking about how you could respond to it differently. Thanks so much for joining me today. Please like my page and follow me on Twitter to stay up to date on the different stuff I'm doing and also things I find interesting I tend to post. I also want to encourage you to go to my website where I have many resources about anxiety and ADHD and lots of psychological stuff for kids, families, and adults. And to sign up for my newsletter, which I'll be posting once a month that will have lots of information about living successfully with ADHD. Thanks for joining me and have a wonderful day.